Melissa is the Director of Programs at Memory Home Solutions, which is actually in St. Louis, Missouri. And I am actually aware of Memory Home Care Solutions because I'm an occupational therapist myself. And having worked in this field, I believe that the team at Memory Care Home Solutions is one of the best in the country, working with occupational therapists who really have a finger on the pulse of the best way to support individuals and families who are living with Alzheimer's and other forms of neurocognitive disorders. And so we're very excited to have Melissa join us tonight. And Melissa brings over 20 years of experience in both not-for-profit leadership and as an occupational therapist across different types of organizations. And we're very excited for her to share her experiences with you all and with us together on the ways that we can support families who are living with different types of dementia. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Melissa.
All right. And on that note, we're going to switch screens. Here we go. So I mentioned we have our community administration for community living grant that helps to support some of the things that we do. And so our pre-test and post-test is related to that. And so today we're looking at recognized impact of dementia-related cognitive and behavioral impairments on independence and safety in the home. And we're going to look at barriers that are often encountered in the home that can cause limitations to function, and look at modifications to improve or maintain safety. And I don't know if anybody can answer in the chat perhaps, but I'm interested in our group tonight. What are your backgrounds? Is there certain professions? Is it caregivers? Is it professionals? Just always interested to know who the audience is.
Looks like we have a combination of caregivers and professionals.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Well, many people are living with different types of dementia or brain diseases. And so we also want to make sure that we bring awareness to the developmental disability population too, because as they age, there are complications that are put them at high risk for dementia. And that being said, so people with Down syndrome, cognitive decline is common. More than 80% of people over the age of 65 will have had a diagnosis of dementia. So we want to make sure that we're looking at people in all walks of life, looking at what is going on with their memory changes, specifically, across the spectrum there. And so many of you know this, but just to kind of define dementia and what it looks like, the different things it could present as. So these are changes in memory. It could be changes in attention to details and tasks of everyday life. It could be executive function, initiating tasks. It could look like sensory perception problems. It could look also like difficulty with moving different parts of the body. A lot of times mood can be affected. There's extreme changes in mood that can happen. And one thing is definitely related to the next. So for example, memory, if that's impaired, that can affect their mood. They can be upset with themselves for not remembering where they last put the item that they're looking for, that kind of thing. So with behaviors in dementia, it's important to know that different things happen and not everybody experiences these things, but they can occur. So sometimes there's arguing, irritability, complaining. They might be resistant to receiving help because they've always done it themselves. They're very independent. And now, you're asking to assist them and they might not want that help. They may refuse to bathe and change clothes or take their medicine, the things that they were doing every day up until this point. They may not follow through with different types of agreements. They might wander or try to leave, especially if it's a place that they don't recognize. They might be confused about where they are, what time it is, what time of year it is. They may forget to eat a meal. And a lot of times there's a term that we use called sundowning, where they may be confused later on in the afternoon or early evening. So it's important when we're getting under kind of these different types of topics, we want to rule out things that may mimic the look of dementia. And so things like UTIs, medication errors, even dehydration can cause some cognitive changes. And so we want to make sure that, that's not a cause of these memory changes, these brain changes. We also want to look at the stigma and the label of dementia. We do get older and there are changes that naturally occur, but some of these things, it's a little bit more than just natural age occurring changes in the brain. We want to make sure that the person is equipped with all the tools that they are going to need. And so looking at what interests the person and what strengths they have, we want to find different ways to motivate them during a task, perhaps. And having the right care team and support is so super important in how to handle some of these different approaches. It's important to remember that you can't change the person, but there are a few things that you do have control over and what you can change. And what that looks like is the environment that they are in, having a well-supported environment, your approach to what's being asked, the task at hand. So kind of digging into the environment, we want to make sure that they are set up for success. And so with that, we want to look at removing things that may be hazardous to them, whether that's cleaning chemicals, medications, things that we need to make sure we're monitoring. And a lot of times the recommendations that we offer to our caregivers, they look like you would be childproofing your home for a young child, but the same devices work in both ways to kind of protect the ones that we love from these different types of chemicals and medications. We want to make sure that there are locks on cabinets or doors where these things are stored. Again, with the sensory issues and changes that can happen, we want to make sure the water temperature in the house is not going to scald them if they leave the hot water on too hard. So maybe adjusting that for the right temperature. And even to the point of disabling or unplugging appliances if that becomes an issue or a safety concern. Sometimes we've had clients where they want to, go heat up their dinner and they turn the stove on and they forget about it and walk away. So we want to make sure that, we don't have that option. And so sometimes it's removing the knobs completely if they've, maybe figured out the other locks and things that we have on there. You can actually place types of locks on your cabinets, on your refrigerator. We've had clients in the past where they would get things out of the freezer and they'd forget to put them back. And so things would thaw out and defrost and melt. And so we offered the lock for the freezer to keep them safe from making the food all melt away. We want to set up the fridge for success in there. So decluttering as much as possible. Anything that might be spoiled, we want to make sure that that's being cleaned out in a timely manner. We've even gone as far as putting up different types of material in the fridge to hide a shelf if it's something that the person shouldn't access. But then also looking at other safety precautions. So in our training venue at Memory Care Home Solutions, we have a venue that's set up that has a living room, a kitchen, a bedroom, a back kind of a library, if you will. And so we have different things in each of these areas that we can showcase and let people know that these are things you can add to your home. So we have extinguish it's a chemical that hangs underneath the stove or underneath the light fixture of the stove. So if it senses heat, it will disperse and it'll put out a fire that's on the cooktop. But also making sure that your house is up to date with smoke detectors, etc. So the visual and sensory changes that go along, we want to make sure that the person with dementia, while they are at risk at this, we want to make sure that they're safe, and especially in the bathroom. And you guys can see hopefully a picture here of a bathroom that has like a fold down seat in there, but there's also a grab bar and a blue shower curtain. It's important to look at contrast too. And I have another picture we'll get into in a minute that'll show that a little bit more, but we want to make sure that they can see where they're going, kind of aim for that seat. Also looking at how they walk around. Are they holding on to furniture or walls? Is their balance off? This could be from vision changes that they've experienced. So adding those high contrast things to the room is very helpful. In this case, there's a rug on the floor and the shower curtains, so they can kind of see that division. But also there's a grab bar. It's kind of hard to see, but it's wrapped in electrical tape. So there's some black tape around the white grab bar there, so they're able to see that and know that that's there to hold on to. To compensate for memory, we want to give them environmental cues that'll help key them in on perhaps what day it is or what's going on that day. So we suggest having kind of like your little landing pad, if you will, of information for the day. So kind of letting them know what the day is, what the next holiday is. If they have a scheduled visit that day, they can list all the information out so the person can go in and check in on what they're supposed to be doing. We want to make sure that things are as easy as possible for them. So in the case of the microwave picture on the right, we've simplified the buttons so that everything is hidden except for like the start button and the 30 seconds. Everything else could be very confusing for someone if they have a brain change, and so we want to make sure that's easy and simplified for them to use. So when we're talking to someone with dementia, we want to make sure that we keep it very simple and we don't explain too much or ask, do you want to do this? Because oftentimes it's too much information and the person may not understand. They might need more time to process that. So we oftentimes will suggest that you guide them to the steps that they need to take place. So if it's, about getting dressed for the day or about a meal, single steps, very simplified communication. Sometimes it's not helpful to convince a person with dementia of reality. They don't understand that they're having brain changes. To them, they're the same as they've always been. And so we want to make sure that we're very, supportive, but also knowing that they do need help and there's ways and strategies to implement to keep them safe and to keep them on task. So this is my little example of an approach where someone would need to take a shower. And when you ask that person with dementia, you need to take a shower, they're going to tell you, I already did. No, you didn't. You know for fact they did not do that. So an argument would ensue. The person could become frustrated. They could be angry that I always take a shower. Why are you saying I don't take a shower? But in reality, we know that they forgot and they haven't done that. So this is a hard cycle when you continue to go in and try to like convince them of the reality that they are in. There's other approaches that we can take to talk to them and break the steps down simpler. So looking at the task at hand, is it something that they're able to do? Can they participate in it? If yes, making sure that they're safe while they're doing it. We want to monitor the activity as they're doing it. If it's not something that's safe or they're not able to participate, is there a way to break that task down to smaller steps? We want to train the caregiver too to be supportive and knowing how they can kind of look at the activity and analyze those smaller steps. Here's an approach for when someone is being asked to bathe or dress. Again, not over explaining it, keeping it very simple. We're not going to ask the person, do you want to take a shower? We're going to let them know that this is what we're doing. We're going to guide them on the things that should happen in order. And sometimes you need to do single step instructions. Being calm, even though it could be a very frustrating situation, it's important to be calm because the way that you are presenting yourself, they're going to pick up on your nonverbal. So if you are in an angry voice, they're going to pick up on that and they may become agitated and angry as well. So we want to make sure that we're, keeping it simple, keeping it calm, making sure everybody understands what we're supposed to be doing. So in our bathing and dressing environment, if you will, again, looking at the things that could be supportive. So making sure they can see where they're going. If you have white on white on white, sometimes that's really hard to see. we recommend, putting a bright rug down or putting a bright towel next to the shower so they can see those things that they are needing to access. And so with that, lighting is always important as well. To want to make sure that they're able to see what they're supposed to be working on. Sometimes a handheld shower head, that's what's pictured here. It makes it a little bit easier. If there are balance issues, sometimes adding a shower chair or bench and then using that handheld shower head to assist is a nice way around it. And then looking around to make sure that we are reducing any clutter, anything that is, going to be confusing or might distract them from the task at hand. So we're looking at, I mentioned earlier, the water temperature. Like there's things that you can on the front end of things to adjust so that they're safe when they're giving themselves a shower. So here's an example of a very low contrast, very white on white on white. So it's difficult to see, the cream colored rug almost blends in with the floor and it's very close in color to the white tub with the white shower bench and the white grab bar. So someone that has some vision changes, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand where they're supposed to be going in the shower. So we recommend doing some high contrast. So again, I mentioned the electrical tape before. So taping the grab bars so that they know that those are places they can reach for balance. And we have a blue rug on the outside so they can see where the floor is and where the tub begins. And we've also put some of that electrical tape on the shower itself so they can also see where that is. So when people do have sensory problems, the water, it may feel very painful, even though it's not hot. Just the sensation of it hitting the skin can be very painful. So we want to make sure that we are, working with them and sometimes there's other tasks and strategies we can do. So putting a towel over their skin, so like a washcloth in between them and the water so that it's not as painful of the water hitting their skin. Sometimes there's like the towels are kind of a one piece, kind of a wraparound towel. That could be an option for someone if they're having some sensory issues with their bathing. We want to make sure that the environment is supportive. So sometimes music can be a way that we can make that environment more comfortable. And also remembering to stay calm. And even though it might be a frustrating situation, as long as we can like calmly ask them to do what we need them to do. That's usually the approach that we recommend. Sometimes it is step by step. You might have to give them instructions one thing at a time for them to complete the task, and that's fine. But make sure you also allow for time in between those instructions. They might need some time to process what you said and then what that's supposed to look like. Here's some more examples. Sometimes labels are helpful. And so we, in this case, put these clothes are too big. There's a label on there. And the other says winter clothes. So if they're trying to discern between winter clothes and summer clothes, they have a better idea of what they need to do. Now, another strategy can be here, the sign says outfits on rack. So simplifying the task at hand. Before there was, 50 shirts that they could choose from. Now we've simplified the choices into 4 different shirts at the end here on the rack. So they can still have independence and choice in doing the activity, but the choices are more limited, so it makes them successful. Fall prevention in the environment. We want to make sure that we're reducing clutter as much as possible to keep it very simple so we can remain on task and focused. We want to clear paths. So the common areas that somebody would be traveling, we want to make sure they're free of clutter. And sometimes, rugs can be tripping hazards. So we want to make sure that those are clear as well. We need to increase lighting to make sure that there is enough, and we want to see. The screen was going. Okay, sorry about that. So making sure we have good lighting, motion lighting, perhaps where the stairs are, if that's somewhere where they need to have more lighting for safety. And then color contrast transitions and flooring and steps. I know on the bath we showed the strips on there, but you can do that at the bottom of the steps if there is a change, or even just on each step if that's something they need a visual cue for. Another approach is to kind of monitor when people are, moving around. And so motion detectors can help for people who, may have a wandering type of behavior. We want to make sure we know when they're up and moving around. So you can put, we often get driveway sensors is what this is. And so putting that by the bed and it can alert the caregiver to that the person is up and moving around. Sometimes we'll purchase small door alarms for our families and use that as a way to, again, inform the caregiver that the person with dementia has gone out the door. It could be, different types of ring cameras and the doorbells and things like that, where there is a component of the video. We want to make sure that people are uh, being as focused on the task at hand. So making sure that, there's not other distractions going on in the environment. If it's too loud, perhaps, or, if there's a lot of people, it might be overwhelming and overstimulating for that person. We want to make sure that, to avoid falls, we are staying adequately hydrated to make sure we're preventing those UTIs from happening. We want to make sure also that the routines are in place. So maybe they use the restroom before they go to bed to not disrupt their sleep at night. And then having a set schedule for sleep time and wake time as much as possible. So exercise is important too. And, any type of things we can do to prevent falls. So strengthening and endurance, as long as they're able to and willing to participate in activity. So if the person likes to walk, encourage that, maybe go with a friend so that, they're safe if something does happen. And just being as active as possible. We know when people are more sedentary, there's other things that can happen, and that puts you at risk for additional falls because maybe fluid is pooling or circulation problems, that type of thing. For nutrition and hydration, again, it's not asking certain things like, did you eat? Are you hungry? Do you, want this? It's more of informing them. I'm going to sit down and have lunch. Won't you join me? Like there's a nice way to incorporate that without asking them because they may think that they did eat. And we want to make sure that they're doing everything on their schedule the right way and that they're staying properly hydrated and eating their balanced meals. Sometimes, depending on the person and what's going on, we might suggest to leave food out. So when they are hungry, they can come by and grab that snack. But for some, that's a problem. And so we might recommend removing those snacks or putting them up somewhere and just having a couple available for the person. So it's just important about keeping things organized and a balance, if you will. So medications and activities, it's important. It's a balance of things. We want to make sure that we are able to, and our focus at Memory Care Home Solution is more about the non-pharmacological methods. So what are some strategies and solutions to reduce dementia behaviors versus just medicating or over-medicating? So when we first began, we have several evidence-based programs that we use to kind of guide how we do the things that we do. And so we've used the tailored activity program to look at a specific set of activities that clients can perform on a daily basis. And we want to educate the caregivers on, how to do this in a certain manner. Here's some certain strategies. If the person is not willing, here's ways you can, suggest or try to, include them. And we want to make sure that people are set up for that success. So how do you simplify the activity and how do we properly set up the environment for success and, guide them in a right way that it's not too much cueing or support, but enough for them to still have their sense of independence. It's important when we're having people, engage in different activities around the home. We want to make sure the person feels needed and they have a sense of purpose. A lot of times the tasks may be something that's very familiar, very repetitive, something that, it's ingrained in them. For example, baking cookies. This is my picture here. It's important to find the things that are simple to do and that the person is able to successfully continue. Maybe the caregiver starts out the activity and the person then knows what they're doing and they can finish the task. We want to make sure it's a task that they enjoy doing, and that way they are engaged and the caregiver can have a moment to step away and have a little stress relief if needed. And overall, it's the thing that it's doing the activity that counts, not how perfect the cookies are. It's that they were engaged, they had a sense of purpose, and they had an activity that they enjoyed for the day. And a lot of times, music is another way to really get people to engage. Music connects us all in so many different ways. And so we've had families that had a struggle where, their loved one wasn't wanting to go to the doctor or wasn't wanting to go in the car, but they introduced music and some things that they liked. And those transitions from one place to another went a lot more smoother because of the introduction of music. And it was something to lift their mood up. Some other things to incorporate, maybe they want to have a fashion show, dress up, try on jewelry. Like if it's something they enjoy and it's something that they can do and it's not harming anybody and maybe it's putting on a fun little activity for the family. I think it would be a nice way to engage. Sometimes doing the tasks of in this case, laundry, things that are just familiar and repetition that might have meaning for them. So having, grandma fold up my wash rags for me. I forgot to do this. Can you help me with this? Some people want to help and they want to have that sense of purpose. So we'll encourage those tasks as well. All right, I have a little case study here of a gentleman named Gilbert. He's 60 years old, has a developmental disability, and lives in a group home. His primary caregiver is Jamie. And more recently, he's been released from several day programs because of agitation and aggression. And Jamie's noticed that he's started shuffling more and arguing more throughout the day. And at night, he seems to be going through all his drawers and moving things around. He no longer seems to want to do the things that he used to enjoy, like helping other people sorting laundry. Um, he's primarily concerned about his safety at home, like being able to go up and down steps. And Jamie has encouraged him, why don't you walk like you're at Busch Stadium? Walk, take big steps, nice big steps. So that's his motivation and encouragement to take big steps. But now he's not doing that. And Jamie is worried because she used to be able to give him incentives to behave well at daycare, and now nothing seems to work, not even his favorite meal. So, just kind of identifying that there are some things that are going on here. Um, just kind of think about it, what might this mean? So he's been in and out of the hospital several times due to falls and other problems going on. He was finally diagnosed with dementia. And so sometimes when that diagnosis comes, the caregiver, family members, the support team, that's more of oh, this is what that is. It's not that they're trying to play you or trying to act a certain way, because it can be confusing. And so now with a diagnosis, they kind of can start to understand that. And so it helped Jamie to decide to get more people on board for that care team to learn about strategies. And so they were referred to us at Memory Care Home Solution where we could support them in all of that. And so when we met with them, the initial concern was for some home safety. We talked about the steps and how those are a safety concern. And we want to make sure that, he's set up for success. So some people will relocate their loved one onto a main floor because it may be easier and avoid the steps altogether. But other options might include adding a second set of rails. So there's railing on both sides of the stairs going up and down. Motion detectors were recommended as well so that the family knew when he was getting up, moving around. With the behaviors, the incentives weren't working anymore. And sometimes, what works for one person with dementia will not work with another person. It's very customized and very individualized. So we want to try to, brainstorm with the family. What are some things that could work? So finding what the motivators are in that moment. It may be that, he's always loved one thing and now that's not working. So we're going to look at what is the motivator during that time. Simplifying the activities, again, making a game out of laundry perhaps versus just having him do a task. And, maybe being involved a little bit more to those motivators. So he likes planning with dinner. He likes to help decide what they're going to have for dinner. So being a part and being involved in that is giving him a sense of purpose. So just to give a quick overview too, at Memory Care Home Solutions, we use those evidence-based intervention. Currently, we're using something called Care Ecosystem to help guide our families in strategies to, reduce this caregiver stress and improve function for people. We want to make sure that everybody is supported in the right ways. And so our program is a free program initially for dementia navigation, and they will meet monthly with our navigators to kind of do a touch base, check in, see how things are going. This is something that we offer. Nationwide, we can do a lot of Zoom calls or phone calls. And if somebody would like to, they can come into our business. They can have their on-site visit and then as well see our training venue for some recommendations. If the caregivers expresses concern about home safety, or maybe there's just some things they need a little bit more help with, we can elevate that to our clinical team. And that's an in-person occupational therapy visit to look at, home safety, to look at implementation of some of the strategies. We also have a licensed clinical social worker to provide psychotherapy. So sometimes caregivers need a little, help in that transition from going from partner to now caregiver. And so it can be, all kinds of things. Sometimes people need a little support in that way as well. And all of our calls and everything, we go for a year to kind of see, check-ins as needed. And then obviously if there are things that come up in between, we're able to support them. All right. And so this is my post-test QR code. If you were able to do that earlier, I would love for you to take the post. And if I can set this in my chat. I'm going to open it up for any questions too.
Great, absolutely, Melissa. Thank you. And actually, Melissa, if you have the links for that, and if you want to put those in the chat, that would be great.
Yes.
I know a few
Yes.
folks came in late, so unfortunately we may not have the pre for them, but if you want to put them both in there, you could do that as well.
I did
However,
the pre earlier. That should have went through, I hope. I'll do them both here.
okay, actually, right. So if you came in late, if you scroll back into the chat there, you should be able to see it, or Melissa can put it in again. If you could just take that survey. For those of us, as both of our organizations have grant funding, and part of getting, grant funding is actually being able to share information back to the funder about the services that we've offered. So those surveys are actually quite important for us. So thanks so much. So there are a few questions. Again, just those of you who are in the Zoom room with us, feel free to put a question in the chat. There were a few that came in, and also if you want to ask a question, you can also turn on your video and raise your hand, or push down on the button, raise your hand on there, and I can call on you to ask those questions. But a few things came in as you were talking, Melissa. So let me go through those. One of the topics that came up, and I think this is frequent, we have people who actually, may be resistant to using a cane or a walker, and so they use furniture to walk and to navigate and to get around a room. And, the question that came in is, if a person is using furniture for support, do we go with that? Do we remove the furniture? If that can kind of add to an experience of clutter. So if you just want to kind of talk a little bit about furniture walking and kind of how
Yes.
that balance
Yes.
of modifying the environment and going with the environment. Mhm.
Right. You want that just supportive environment. So in some cases that is okay, but we're looking at their safety, right? So if they are missing where they're trying to reach and grab, obviously that's a concern. We'd want to, recommend a different way. Perhaps maybe they need a walker or a wheelchair, or something that can help get them from point A to point B in a safe manner. If they're able to do that, successfully, that's one thing. But if they're not, we want to look at what can we put in in the environment to support them in the right way.
Right, great. Yeah, it's always a fine line there, and I think I like how you said that it's there's kind of a judgment call there,
Mhm.
where it's really, can be a challenge for families too, because right, it's easy for Melissa and I to say that and to be in an environment where we can say, oh, we're at a risky territory here. And you may not necessarily, as a family member, have that kind of knowledge. And so this is where we really encourage you to get a therapist involved. And so if you're supporting somebody who's living with dementia at home, especially if they actually aren't able to get out of their house independently, then getting a referral for an occupational therapist or a physical therapist to come into your home and to do that evaluation is actually really critical. And a lot of times families will say, well, like how do we actually go about doing that? You get that referral from your physician. And so your primary care physician can write a referral for home care services where nursing can come in. They can do a medication evaluation and actually see what's going on in the home. And then you can get the services kind of baked in that way. We've got another talk that's actually recorded about kind of home care services and, what qualifies and what doesn't qualify, what does Medicare cover, what doesn't Medicare cover. And actually you can also call us if you've got some of those questions and we can, guide you through that. Our team can guide you through those questions as well. Couple of other questions that came up there was, you mentioned the guard on the stove. I did put a link in for the Alzheimer store, that's just, one location where you can find some things. There's an electric store. I put a link in for, for that adapter for the stove that you can plug, the stove in. I don't know, Melissa, if you had on your list of references there, if you have, the specific products that you were showing.
Yeah, I actually in the chat I put our YouTube page. So Memory Care Home Solutions has our own YouTube page where we've posted, first of all, a tour so you guys can get a virtual tour of our facility. But then also by topic, there are different things. So there's one about bathing, there's one about like a lot of the topics that I covered today. There's individual videos about that. So people can go on and kind of see what that looks like, what the product looks like, what the strategy might be involved with. So it's a really nice way to kind of see some of those things. And there are so many, like you said, there's the Alzheimer's store, which is great. It's like a go-to, but depending on your situation, everything is so customized.
Right, exactly. And again, that's where actually getting, some guidance from a professional is actually really helpful. And part of the reason why actually we've invited, Melissa and somebody from the team there to do this talk tonight is because this really is a specialty of theirs. And even at CaringKind, we're redoing our website. And one of the things that we're doing on our new website is linking people to other organizations like, Memory Home Solutions, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel if somebody's already, has good work and good resources available. And so we want to make sure that, we're passing those resources on to you. So feel free to check out their websites, take a look at some of the links there in the YouTube videos. I also put a couple of other links in the chat. There was a question about exercise and adapting exercise. And I put a link into the talk that Olivia is going to be doing next week on meaningful activities. And so that will give you some ideas about what kinds of activities, that'll be a whole talk dedicated to finding the right activities that might be meaningful for, for the person who those of you who are families or friends on the call will be supporting. And if you're a professional, some ideas, different types of ideas for activities. I also put in a link to the National Institutes on Aging has some wonderful resources on activities. And so that link I've put in there, and there's a little section there about how do you adapt exercise accordingly. Again, there's the realm of which, kind of as a family member, you're comfortable. And then there's a greater need to have professionals taking look, especially with exercise, because you want to make sure that, you're considering things like what is the person's physical health, what is their cardiac health, and then how do their cognitive abilities change, how you need to adapt and adjust what they're doing from an exercise perspective. Let's see there. I think there's a question about bed safety. And if you've got kind of some specific, I know one of the resources that we've used, there are kind of sensors. Melissa did talk a little bit about motion sensors, if people are getting out of the bed. There are also different types of sensors that you can actually put in the bed that can, if a person, like a pressure sensor there, that if somebody gets up and they leave, then you get a notification, that's happening. Melissa, do you have other suggestions on safety in the bed?
Yeah, and we use that too, the pressure one, so we can, understand if someone is getting up. Sometimes a camera, if they're not able to, be there. They can still zoom in or view in, if you will, from a different part of the home, or, other relatives if they're helping to kind of keep an eye out. Other things, if they have problems getting into bed, if their bed sits up higher, maybe adding a little step stool, or they have the kind that have the little handles on them so that they're supported in getting into bed. So again, it's customized depending on the person and what type of support you need.
Yeah, I always think about different types of grab bars, and even as I'm aging, um, when I'm in the shower, I want my grab bar there, and I don't have any physical abilities, but you never know. It's different. As we age, our senses do change, and having that something to grab onto as an assistive device is actually, very helpful for kind of all of us. It's a funny thing because we talk about this concept of universal design. It's really like good design is good for everybody, whether you have a physical impairment or a cognitive impairment. And so taking kind of good design principles is also a worthwhile thing to explore, and yes, so grab bars and thinking about ways that people can push up, and sometimes you know sometimes the cupboard with the vanity is enough, right? It's you've got a solid cupboard with a sink top. Maybe that's actually works for people to use to get in and out of the bathroom and on and off the toilet.
One more thing in the bathroom, you just made me kind of remember it too, but in our training venue, in our bathroom, we have a mirror over the sink, as most bathrooms have. And sometimes for a person with dementia, they might be confused. They might not recognize the person in the mirror. They might think someone else is in the restroom with them. So we recommend to put a picture over the mirror so you can just, do like a double-sided 3M and put it up over the mirror so it's just a painting versus the mirror, so it's less confusing. So there's different strategies like that that we would recommend too.
Nice, nice. Are there other questions that anybody kind of in the gallery has? If you do, feel free to turn your video on. We can see you there. You can raise your hand. We can help you, get unmuted if you've got a specific question for Melissa. Darren, did I see you unmute yourself there? Did you have a
I
question?
did unmute. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to be able to do it without confusion.
Wait,
Uh,
decluttering. Well,
Oh, all right. So yeah, so we want to declutter because it's Darren's mom, my wife. We have a closet full of clothes that she never wears, but every time I say I want to go through it and get rid of stuff, she doesn't want to do it. So how do you deal with that?
like holding on to things, not just clothes, but like even if we have multiples of something.
Mhm. Sometimes
Right.
it's easier to do, it is a great question. Sometimes it's easier to do those things without the person present.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and I know it might not sit well, but sometimes it is for the better. And especially if you have multiples of things, maybe if you got rid of 3 of them and she had 1 or 2 left, maybe that would be okay. But yeah, just trying to do those things without the person present, especially if they're going to have something to say about it or get upset with you removing some of those items. Sometimes it's just a little easier.
And I think a lot of that too is, it's we're asking people, it's really a lot of brain challenge to make a decision.
yeah.
And when, it's easy for us to think about, oh, well, you're asking me, do I want to keep this or do I want to throw this away? Well, having to well, what might I need it for? That's a
Mhm.
future planning, insight, which is actually a part of the brain that's not working correctly.
Right.
So it creates there's a tension there. So it's really trying to ask a person it's that fine line of wanting to promote independence and autonomy and inclusion, but also recognizing that you're working with someone whose brain is not actually doesn't have the capacity to think through things in the same way.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. She doesn't want to get rid of stuff because she thinks she might need it in the future.
Exactly, exactly. And so even kind of doing a proactive strike of I know you might need this in the future, so we're gonna actually put it here. Because then that's like you're immediately providing that calming, we've got this covered. Like it's like you're verbalizing the thinking out loud so that the person doesn't have to.
Mhm.
That can be kind of a strategy. But I agree with Melissa. It's the subtle way, so it doesn't feel like, oh, now we're going, through this big, we're gonna kind of redo everything at once, because that can feel disorienting and out of control. But I think, one of the biggest things that we see as working with closets, right? When someone has fewer things in the closet to choose from, just simplifying that makes life a lot easier.
Absolutely. I mean, she wears the same thing all the time. So it's like, we already know that, it's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking it. Any other
Good.
questions
Good question.
from folks out in the group? It looks like somebody who's on a Galaxy. Was there somebody else?
Me,
Go ahead.
Yes, no, maybe? No. Any other questions from folks in the room? Okay, one of the things that you didn't necessarily talk about, Melissa, that I want to introduce and let folks know about is one of the things we always recommend to people kind of early on is some kind of we offer a medic alert bracelet or some kind of an identifier. And this is critical for both the person who's living with dementia and their primary family member. Can't tell you how many situations we've had where something has happened to the to the spouse or to the primary daughter, and we didn't, and we didn't necessarily know that they were providing direct support for someone. We just had someone in our circle where the husband is in the early stages, and his wife had a traumatic death, and now this person who's living with dementia really can't live independently, and had that could have been a very challenging situation if there weren't people immediately who knew that she was providing direct care for this person. So we always encourage people to get some kind of a medic alert or some kind of an identifying bracelet for both the person with the care and the caregiver. And actually, if you live in New York, we actually have a scholarship program to provide those bracelets free of charge, and I'll put that link in the chat for those of you who are on the call. But I strongly encourage you to consider doing that, and do it in a way. With my dad, I was the one who's like, oh, Dad, please, I need you to do this for me. And this is just in case something happens because I was a long distance daughter, it's my dad who had, vascular dementia. His wife was with him. Like, I need you to do this for me, even though you have this, your spouse is there for you. If something happens to one or another, this is going to make me feel better if you do this. So it's not so much that you need it, I need it, and that was how we handled that situation. And he was willing to do it
And I bet that he was willing to do that for you because you asked him to do that. It was important.
Yes, exactly. So I'm putting the link to our Wander Safety page in the chat.
Wonderful.
But Melissa, this has been great. Thank you so much. Lots of resources, lots of information. For those of you who are on the webinar, really appreciate you coming. Hope this was helpful for you all. Melissa, we would be grateful for your slides if you're willing to share those with us. So we'll pass those on. Those will be posted on our website, and we'll if you're on the call, you will be getting, or if you're on the Zoom, you will be getting information from us. We send out a monthly calendar of upcoming education events, and we'll let you know what slides and videos of the session have been posted, so you can come back and refer to these at your convenience. But we hope that that this has been helpful for you. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to put our helpline number right now in the chat. You can call and talk to this. You can call and talk to one of our navigators anytime. You can schedule an appointment to talk to them about your situation. Just like Melissa was saying, you know, that they work individually with folks. We do. We've got a wonderful relationship with them. If we think that there's something, you know, we can kind of mutually get you connected to the resources that you need. So feel free to reach out to us, visit our website, schedule a time to talk with someone. And thank you again, Melissa, so very much for joining us. And we'll look forward to the next time that you would like to share your wisdom, or somebody from your team would like to join us and share. So thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in a future session.